Welcome to the fastest daf in town. Today, Metzia daf Samach Zayin. We are going to begin on Samach Vav Mebez, the very last line. Omer Rava. As we continue to Samach Zayin Mid Aleph, Hami Yosivna Kamed Rav Nachman, sitting in front of Rav Nachman, Uboi L'oisve Ona, and he wanted to ask him regarding Ona. What is that? So we learned previously, as quoting in Rashi, the machzer lo ana, that if a person charges an additional sixth, so then you have to return that. V'afal gab demadas nasan lo, even though it was given with that person's consent, hoil v'ta, it's considered to be like a mistake. Alma mechil b'tois lav mechilahi. So we see clearly that even a mechila b'tois is not a mechila. And we said in yesterday's daf that Rav Nachman mechil b'tois will have a mechila, that it's not considered to be a mechila, which is apparently what we're saying here. However, again, according to others, we disagree with this statement about mechil b'tois. But clearly, when it comes to, again, in case of no, that's the din. V'oidik, so he spent time to investigate and to understand my position. Chazisan ionus, and he said that we should look at the din of an ionus, which we're going to see later on, which represents a woman who is not showing simanim of being a woman who is matured physically, and therefore she has the din of a katan until she reaches the age of 20. So this is basically what it explains it. Now, when it comes to ana, it's mechil b'tais, and it's not considered a mechil, you have to still give it back. What is that? Hari ionis, the mechil b'taisi. Now, when it comes to an ionis, we say it's a mechil b'tais, v'havi mechila, and it is a mechila. What does that mean? It says Rashi, Kidmani Laraisi Taimadavar Ma'ionis can all come on. Ditnan. How do we see this? When it comes to Hama Menes, when it comes to a woman who does Miyan, what is Miyan? So as we've seen a lot in Yevamis, is referring to a girl who is a katana. She's a Yesaima, which means even though typically it's the father, speaking to Sati Shaseh, who does the Kedushin with Diraisa, however, we are lenient and we allow the mother or older brother to have her married off. However, the Chachamim said that she could do miyan min atayra, and therefore, because the maisim of a katana means nothing, and the mother really does not have the ability midaraisa, it's only the rabbanan that was masakin this kedushin. So therefore, in order that shouldn't be naig minhag hefker, so they say that all she needs to do is miyan, basically walk out of the marriage, and that is acceptable. So that's what Amam Benes is. Rashi spends a little bit of time explaining it. Vahashniya, which is shnias le'arayas, which is not an arayas from the Torah, but it's a din d'Rabbanan, and the Gemara in Ksuvas elsewhere discusses various cases of a shnias le'arayas. The ionis, we're going to be focused on an ionis, again, this woman who does not show simanim. Ein lehen lo ksuba, so they do not receive a ksuva, veloy peros, and also not peros, velo bulois, and also not garments. So now Rashi says as follows: Shniya again is shniya sarayas. The chachamim are geyser nemsetes yavamas. The ein lo ksuva knas. It's a knas. The katzinala minei she margilaso aleha. So, because maybe she's the one who may entice him to get married, so therefore it's Kanash doesn't get a ksuba. And an islandess, which it's explained in Ksubas, it's like an isle, ainla, like a woman is comparable to this woman who is or this animal, which is a ram that cannot produce. So they don't get a ksuba because it's a mekach tais. The marrying a woman who's not capable of having a child and shows no simanim of maturity is a mekach tais. The lava daita dahachi natzva. Says Rashi, a person didn't marry her with this intention of marrying an ionus. Now v'afagav dachi machlahi nedunya delay lamaisra biyado tais havi. she's Michael, and let's say gave it to her husband, this dowry, it is a mechila, right? It is considered to be a mechila. So if she gave over this dowry, even though the whole kedushin is mekatos, have a mechila, it's considered to be a mechila. Nonetheless, we still see. Okay, let's slow down. No peros. Nechasim shenafula birusha achar shnises. If let's say she inherited some property as an inheritance after she already married, so there's no peros in that situation. Tiknu chachamim shabal oicha peros. Normally the chachamim gets the peros. V'lo tiknu tachtehem shim nishbis chayim lifdaisim shalo. And we were misaking that why would we allow him to get the peros? Because if she's ever held in captivity, so therefore that's like the give and take of the of him redeeming her, because he gets the peros. But it says the lo krinan bo, we don't read the pasuk of the isvinach leintoi, that when you redeem her, you can bring her back to me as a wife. So therefore, the reality is that you're not really going to be taking her back, because the whole kedushin was a mekatos. Afil hachi, nonetheless, like say, lo yachzer lo peros shachal. The din is that if he did eat the fruits, he does not have to give back the peros that he ate. V'lo bois hechnis lo begadim b'nedunyasa. If in the dowry she brought in clothing, even if they are still here, you don't have to give it back. Alma, here's the key line. Mechila achilas peros, alvabi shibatais machila mechilahi. That it's still considered to be a mechila, even though this whole case is a case of a tais. So we see clearly tais is considered to be a mechila. So you said akasha, we see by ona that mechila is not a mechila because you have to give it back the ona. But we see when it comes to idleness, that's not the case. We see pumfakert, that once there's a mechila, even though it's a case of a tais, it is a valid mechila. Which is why he doesn't have to give back these things, including the peros and the like. So we see from here, it's a proof. It's a proof against this kasha. Vlohi, that's actually not a good point. Lo na havi tiyofta. The question of ona is really not a question to say, we see mechila b'tois is not a mechila. V'lo ayonis misayale. And the truth is, ayonis is not a proof that mechila b'tois is a mechila. Lo ana tiyofta. Why is this not a tiyofta? This case of ona. Do yadalit diise oina demachal gabe. The buyer didn't know he was frauded, right? So you can't tell him it's a case of mechila b'tois. So it's some element of mechila. It's possible that we're dealing with a situation where the guy didn't even know that he was defrauded. When it comes to an idleness, it's also good for her. She wants people to know she was married. Says Rashi, she still wants to be able to have verified and to have people know that she was married. Question 10. Madua ein chazeres ona kushu Rav Nachman the saver gabel lekeach davar shel ba'ol olam the achlo the mechila b'tais mechilhi. So as we said, shani ona dol yada the isa the nimchel gabe. Again, he didn't know. Okay. Now we continue with the following story. How he is the story of a woman. The Amrulela who Gavra, that she turned and said the following statement to a person. Zil zavanli ara mikrivoi. Go and purchase for me land from my relative. Azul zavanla. So he did exactly as this woman said, and he purchased this property on her behalf. Or Malay, so the moicher, the seller said to the shliach, okay, I'm selling you this land, but zuzi, if I'm able to come up with money, mahadrisla nihiloi, then I want to be able to reclaim back my land. So, is that a good statement that even though he's selling it, he has the ability to get it back. So the shliach said an interesting statement. He said, you, the Navla Ache, and Navla, my brother. Now, Navla is the name of this woman. Says Rashi, Ata vihi kroivim atem. You and her, your relatives. The Navla lashon arami ben bezachar ben nekeva. Okay, this is just a name, etc. So, what does this statement mean? The fact that you made this statement, basically saying that you and her brother are related. Omar, when he said this, Samcha daite, v'loi gomer umachni, ara hadra. So we're samich das, and therefore it's not a complete kinyan, to the point that when he has the money, then he's able to actually receive his field back. It's understood that that statement is an acceptance that he can receive his land back when he produces the money. So there's no question about that. But now we ask Peri Mai, what's the status of the fruit on this field? Ribis katsutza havoy isn't considered like it was prearranged ribis, v'yotzim b'dayanim, and therefore you can collect this from courts, because if it's a real minotaur level of ribis, so then it's considered to be yotzim b'dayanim. Odilma ki avak ribis havi. Maybe this only has the status of avak ribis being yotzim. So what is the din when it comes to the peros? When it comes to these fruits, it's only considered to be avak ribis, and therefore you don't have the ability to get it from Beis Din. So he says the same thing. So he asks another question. Mashkanta mai. We're going to be spending a decent amount of time talking about a mashkain, a field as a pledge for a loan, says Rashi. Mashkain loy sadeh. You made this field as collateral for a loan. And you didn't set aside to say that you can eat these fruits in the interim from this field with shem ribis. El stam, you just gave over the field as a mashkain. And the malveh, he took over this field and he started eating the fruits. So what's the din? Hasam taimamai. What's the reason why we said that it's considered, again, in this particular situation, that the land goes back, mishum duloi katzle, because it was not prearranged as interest, and therefore it's considered to be like a vak ribis, and therefore the peros, it's not yotzei b'dayanim. So hachanami lo katzle. Also here, you didn't specify and say that you can use the fruits, and therefore it's a vak ribis. So dilma hasam zvini hacha halva. Maybe there's a distinction, as we said many times, when it comes to a business transaction, so we're more lenient. When it comes to an actual loan, so then maybe we're more strict, and therefore he gets it back. So he said, no, it doesn't make any difference. And therefore, even though it's a case of a halva, it's not it was not prearranged as interest, and therefore it's not yotzei b'dayanim. Amra papi, Avid Ravina Uvda. So Papi actually paskin like this. But he actually calculated the fruits that were consumed, the apik peri, and he ate, and he made him pay for the fruits, and that's the lo karaba bar Rav Huna, which is unlike the statement of Rabbi, as we just said above. Amr Mar Bered Rav Yosef Mishmida Rabbi, he said in the name of Rabbi, Hai Mashkanta. When it comes to, again, a field that is a pledge for a loan, ba'asr the misalki, if we're dealing with a city, in a place, says Rashi, b'makayim shenagu l'halvo stam, that a person lends without making any statements, v'malva oichel peros, and the lender eats those fruits, v'lo pasak imo bin chayasa, and it wasn't calculated any of the deductions of the fruits that were consumed. So if we're dealing with that situation, achol shir zuzi, so he can eat the amount of the zuzim, says Rashi, kafima shenimcharam haperos b'shuk. However, the amount of these fruits will be in the marketplace. Uval haloiva lefanenu, and then the borrower can come. V'omer any rights is shoicha perosai beribis. I don't want you to eat these fruits. Yasuma peros shoicha v'hitel b'chayvoi. Okay, so again, Hai mashkanta ba'asid misalki sa'acha shir zuzi. Misalkinan le, so the price will reduce with the fruits that were eaten. Achol tfei, but if you ate more than the amount of the loan, lo mafkinami. Now we're not going to take it out from him. Lo machashbinan mishtar l'shtara. Says Rashi, im chayiv lo mois mishtar acher. If you owe money in another star, ein ha'oidif bazeh she'achal puren l'chayiv ashtar acher. So even though you had a loan and you gave him the fruit, the field, and he was eating fruits to the extent that there was more consumption of fruits than the actual loan, so even if you have a second loan, so we're not going to say that, okay, that this loan was canceled, but you also eat more fruits and therefore it's going to be a deduction on the second star. No, we're not mechashbin on mishtar star. We're not going to make any deductions from one star to a next. Uviyasmim, when we're dealing with Yisayimim, if let's say this field belongs to Yisayimim, achol shir zuzi misalkinan le, we will again reduce the price. Achol tfei mafkin minei umechashvina mishtar shtar. So when it comes to Yisayimim, we're more lenient, or however you want to look at it, for the Yisayimim, so that if let's say the malva ends up consuming more fruits of the Yisayimim's field, that there's also a second loan that's connected to the assignment, so they will be deducted from that one too. Outside of a yosem, but generally we're not going to deduct if it's more than the loan. So if you eat the exact amount, also you should deduct. Blo zuzi, my timer, saluki blo zuzi. If it's without money, afuki minehu. So if it's considered to be again a vak ribis, so as we said, you cannot be yotze b'dayanim. So therefore, even if it would be to that amount, it would also not be deducted. That he paskin when it came to these the fields which belong to Yisayimim who are ketanim, as we continue to Samach Sad Mebeis, kigedoyim, just like a gadol. Says Rashi, v'afgav the ochel shir zuzi. He says that even if they did eat the amount, we're not going to deduct it. Because it's vak ribis, and the dayanim don't have the ability to deal with that. So if we're dealing with again this mashkon on land, and it's a city in which there is deductions, lo nechol ella bin chayosa. Again, the debt. You should not eat it unless the debt was downgraded per year. However, says Rashi, sheyinche lo minachayiv davar kotzev l'shana denira kemoichay. Okay, v'sumar rabbanan afil b'nachiyasa l'neichel. So we're more strict when it comes to sumar rabbanan. Question 11. So a sumar rabbanan should be more strict. You shouldn't eat from a land which was given to you as a mashkon, even if there's a place where deductions are made, you still shouldn't do it. Says Rashi, he has to be very careful, and be strict, even things which are allowed. Because if they see him, then people are going to be lenient. Okay, fine. So elo b'may nechol. So then what is he going to eat? B'kitzutza, with a set limit. We're going to explain this. So anichol ma'diyamer kitzutza sharia. The one who says it's allowed. Then that makes sense. Elo ma'diyamer kitzutza v'esur ma'achem me'amar titmar. Kitzutza. So what is the din when it comes to this? So pligabo ravacha ravin. It's machagas. Chadam kitzutza shar v'chadam kitzutza asira. So v'hechidam kitzutza. What exactly does this mean? Putting a set limit to his share. Diyarmulei ad chameshnin, until 5 years. Achil nolabula nachyasa. You're going to eat it without any deductions. Mekan ve'elach shaim nelach kuhut peri. Then afterwards then it will be deducted. Anytime you don't make any deductions, it's us to eat these fruits. First 5 years I'll be deducting. And then afterwards we'll value the entirety of the fruits. So one who was strict in the first case will be lenient here. One who was strict and says it's usher, and even the second case, heichi shari l'meichel. So how can he eat it? Shari. Kimashkanta de if it's considered to be like the mashkan of tsura. What was that? Because the custody, because they actually wrote the following quote: "Mimishlim shanye ilan." After these years are gone, tepik ara da b'loy kesef. That the loan is going to be completely repaid. Says Rashi, the loan mechsi kaloiba. Therefore, no longer looks like a loan. Elo kaloy kech menu peris hashanim. Ha'elu ha'moisalo. Looks like it's just a business transaction. This land, again, which is given as a collateral, but Asud Misalki, in a land in which the lova could pay off the loan before it's due. Ein bal chayim goyve. Says Rashi, Imes hamalva. Let's say the lender dies, v'naf lifnei banav, and now the lender's children are the ones who can collect this loan. Ein bal chayiv shalavihem, the bal chayiv of the father cannot go goyvehim and collect. Ein lehem lavihim gufa shel karka klum, because it doesn't have the actual land itself. Matalti be'almanin, who only has the right to the matalta the aslam mishabdi, and it's not there's no shibun of mataltalin for your assignment. Bal chayiv. So ein bal chayiv. So what does that mean? So says Rashi, and Gemara in Bava Basra says that even though typically a firstborn child gets a double portion, it's got to be possessions that are in existence. But when it comes to a loan, not. So Hanami also here Hoyel Asun Masalkin, since he can deduct and pay it off, milvav almahu, it's like a regular loan. Dana Sadalafanov, the field's not in front of him. El Shibud Paris, he has a right maybe to the fruits. The Havli Roy, it's like future assets. Van Bechor Noito Roy, Lavoy Lifnehim Lachamisa. Lach like Kedamuchsuk, Biad Aviv, etc. Bechlashe Matzilo. So it's only things that exist, not future fruits. Okay. So you won't get pishnayim on that. V'shvius misham tasim. And the shvius, just like any other loan, will be mishamet. Says Rashi, Einzem milval mashkoin is not considered like a loan against collateral, in which the shmita is not mishamet. In that situation, the hasam b'mashkoin shel mataltalin. Well, if there was a mashkoin of mataltalin, and over here we're talking about karka. Ba'asudol masakli bal chayiv. And however, in a situation where the city where the lova cannot pay it off, so in that situation, goyvehemenu. So in that situation, the din is that if the malva dies and now his children inherit it, so the bal chayiv of the father is able to collect. Is allowed to collect. Ubachor noitel pishnayim. The ein shvius masham tasa, because it's considered to be like a mashkin. Okay, let's hold off. Let's look at question 12. Ha'im bal chayiv shel malva goyva min karka. Can the bal chayiv of the malva collect from the land shenafla kimei yasmi? Ha'im b'chor not to be shnayim. So ba'asud misalki in bal chayiv goyva minu. Okay. Weiter. Even from date, the mats of dates. Says Rashi, Kishigardrin tamarim shaydchin machsalos tachas hadakom. You put like these mats underneath the trees, and naifon hatamarim alehin, and the dates will fall on these mats. He wants to collect his money. So you can even collect from these dates that fell on these mats. And let's say it was gathered up in the baskets, keninhu. Then in that situation, there is a kaina. He was kaina through Hagbah before he was makabel the mois, and therefore it's his. So mandi amerkel shalokech reshus moicher kana lokeach afilu deloi agvinhu besisane kinu. So maybe even if you don't even have to necessarily do Hagbah, if you hold that a kli of the buyer, which is in the reshus of the seller, the buyer could still be kaina it, even that situation, even if you lift it up, it's still a kinyan. Okay, but again, if you hold that having a kli in the reshus of the moicher, that the loikech may not necessarily be able to be kainit, so then you'd have to do Hagbah. Okay, Pshita, the following case is simple. Ba'asun masalki the amr lo mistalakna. The Malva says you can't remove me from this situation. Hakarma lo mistakalna. In other words, if the Malva stipulates and says, I do not want you to remove me from this situation, and it says Rashi b'shas matan mois hista almanashal tuchlu salkeni ad kach v'kach shanim. So I cannot be removed until after a certain amount of years. So then his stipulation stands. Well, ba'asher the lo masalki, in a situation where he can't remove him, yomer mistalakna. The lender says you could remove me. My sarich lemiknimine olo. Does he need to make a kinyan there or not? So Rav Papa oimer lo sarich lemiknimine. He does not need to. Rav Sheshes B'Rei Rav Yidi oimer sarich lemikni. He does need a kinyan mine. V'ilchas a sarich lemiknimine. He does need a kinyan. Almar, the borrower says, Ezel v'yaisi zuzi lo ochel. Go ahead and give me money. The lender cannot eat the fruits. Ezel v'etrach. I will go and I'm going to try. V'aisi zuzi Ravina mar achol mar zutra B'Rei Rav Mari omer lo yisach achol. V'hilchasa lo achol. The din is you cannot eat. Why? Says Rashi, Hayel v'mois muchanim lo. The money is set aside for you. V'naslo reshus liyoshaymet the oichel. But you weren't given permission to eat. V'asnu misalki koi. Rav Kahan Rav Papa Rav Ashi lo echel ben achyasa. They were restricted and did not eat even when it came to the fruits that were deducted. Ravina achel ben achyasa. Ravina did. Amar zutra my time the achel my time of the man the achel ben achyasa. Why did you eat it? Because again there was deductions. Made to have a steachuza. L'chara should have the same din as a steachuza that the Torah says in Rashi says with daisim in the hektish. You want to redeem it from hektish. L'fir shanim shiad hayovel until the yovel sella upudyoin l'shana for each year. Kavi cheshman chamishim shekel obey zera chaymes sarim l'arboyim v'teisha shayis hayovel. So you, depending on how close we are to yovels, how much there's deductions. So what do we see by a steachuza that you wish to redeem from hektish? So steachuza lav avdika achal peri tuva, even though maybe hektish took a lot of the fruits. Amar Achmana, the Torah says, as we continue Samach Chesam Aleph, kaparikla ba'ar bezuzi. You can redeem it with 4 zuz, which is a sella. Hachinami lo shna. Also over here shouldn't be any difference. Says Rashi, Daha chazina dehecha diyarid l'safek v'naisin may sell l'shana. Safek yuba paris, safek lo yuba paris. We don't know if it's going to have fruit or not. Havizvini mikara umifrak bahachi. Nonetheless, it can be redeemed. Mandi asar amalach steachuza hektishi. That's hektish. Rachmana ukmi apidyan. And the Torah said that there was a din pidyon on hektish. Hacha halvahi yimixik karibis. So over here it looks like ribis, and therefore because of that we're more strict. Okay, we're going to stop here, but let's maybe see another question. Starting off with question 12. Actually, I think we saw 12. Okay, let's look at question TA 23. Ma din mashkanta ba'asra. This mashkain, the misalki, ve'ochel tfei mishir zuzi. and you ate more than what you're supposed to. So we don't take it away from, especially when it comes to other from other documents. However, when it comes to Yisayimim, we do take away. Rav Ashi, according to Rav Ashi, which he said that he paskin when it came to Yisayimim Katanim Kikedoylim. So he ended up, again, when it comes to Yisayimim, maybe Achol Shir Zuz Misalkinin Le, Achol Tvei Mavkin Mine, Umachashmin Mishtar Shtara. That's dafka when it comes to Yisayimim, but again, according to the Shita of Rav Ashi, he didn't make any distinctions, and it was still there was no difference between a Yosem or not a Yosem. TA 23. Let's put this up here. Gedolim. Fine. TA 23, which is up top here as well. And let's see. Question TB 24, which we already saw. Hilchos Ribis Amar the Sumer Rabban and Sarach Lachmer Tvei. Yafil Bekarkas Sheish deductions. Kasher Hamava Oichel Paris, when the lender eats fruits. Anachnu, we deduct the price of fruit, shu oichel. Avol also lasos im hu talmid chacham ayin toisus. Ayin toisus. Yeah, definitely should be ayin toisus. I don't see this toisus. Okay, adkan.